for joining us for this special Friday conversation with our corporate partners, TruStage, driving business results through DEI transformation. We're glad you're able to join us today. Now, please note the housekeeping rules for this afternoon's event. We know that life happens. You may need to step away, take a call, or even have a conversation. So as usual, we ask that you immediately please mute the volume on your microphone or device, as well as stop your video. Now, these functions can be found at the bottom of your screen or your device. You're important to us, so please, when you come back, make sure to turn that video back on because we want to be truly connected throughout this next hour. And remember, unless you are called upon as a program participant, please keep your volume muted on your microphone or device. Now, we do encourage you to engage with us throughout this afternoon with the virtual clap and chat. So if you have any questions, send them in the chat for these two lovely ladies joining us. Now, to kick off this session, we have a wonderful message from TruStage President and CEO, Terrence Williams.
Hello, everyone. The African American Credit Union Coalition and TruStage have a significant relationship that really is focused on advancing DEI to make a brighter financial future accessible to everyone. Just a few weeks after joining TruStage, I attended the AACUC annual conference in July in Georgia, and I had the pleasure of meeting many of you. And I really want to express my thanks for the warm welcome that you extended to me during that visit. Today, I'm pleased to introduce our speakers, Sela Castillo and Talia Anquiano, for a conversation on driving business results through DEI transformation. Now, they will share insights into ways TruStage and credit unions have enhanced their workforce, customer experience, and community relationships through an intentional DEI strategy. I'm proud to work for a company that advocates for a more inclusive financial services system and a more inclusive society. And I'm excited about working alongside our credit union partners to really advance that vision. Now, I'd like to turn it over to Sela and Talia.
All right, so if Terrence were here, we'd obviously tell Terrence, thank you so much for the introduction. Aspie, thank you for kicking us off. And to the AACUC, thanks so much for having us. I'm excited to be here on a Friday afternoon. It's a little cloudy, a little rainy and dreary here in Chicago, but this has definitely put some light on my day. So thanks so much for having us. We'll start with introductions on mine and Sela's side, and then we'll go ahead and just kind of jump into our content for today and get the conversation kicked off. So for those of you who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Talia Anquiano. I use she, her pronouns. I'm serving as a credit union DEI advisor here at TruStage, currently based in Chicago. And I've been with TruStage for about a year and a half, going on 2 years now this winter. Part of my role is getting a chance to work with credit unions and folks all across the country on advancing some of their DEI strategies and practices, and also working with folks like Sela on some multicultural business strategy practices as well. So I'll toss it off to Sela for introductions, and then we'll get the party rolling here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marisela Castillo. I go by Sela. I am a research consultant for multicultural business strategy at TruStage. I've had the pleasure of working with TruStage since I started as an intern back in 2017. So I've actually been with the company for close to 6 years, but I've about 3.5 going on 4 years for a full-time work here at the company. And it's been truly amazing. Through that time, I've also been very connected with AACUC, so it's always fantastic to be here with you all. We're super excited to share this information with you. Please feel free to put information, share all of your thoughts and feelings, any questions, all in the chat. We'll be sure to answer them kind of as we continue throughout the presentation. And thank you all so much for letting us be here with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Sela. So we're going to be talking through driving business results through DEI transformation today. And as we kind of walk through this slide deck and put some questions in the chat for you all to consider, I want you all to just keep in mind, how can we continue to apply this to our credit unions and the way that we connect with our employees, our members, and our community as a whole? We've got an agenda, super light agenda here for you all today. We're just going to talk a little about who we are as TruStage, how we kind of do DEI at TruStage here. We're going to do a DEI deep dive, go through some high-level foundational concepts just to kind of ground us in the conversations that we'll be having through the first and second half as we get into some data and some employee satisfaction stories and such here. Sala's going to be walking us through some insights from our What Matters Now 2022 research report, which is really exciting. And then we'll leave some time at the end for Q&A. By all means, if there are any questions throughout the session, feel free to just place them in the chat and we'll make space to answer those and have a conversation around it. We wanted to kick it off and show you all a picture of our beautiful team. We've got folks from all walks of life here, a lot of different diverse identity groups here, some visible, maybe some not as visible that you might be able to see here on your screen. We've got folks from coming in from different industries and different movements and such that really make up our team of folks here that touch a lot of different parts of our organization and the credit union movement as a whole. So if you see any faces you recognize, throw some love in the chat there. But we'll go ahead and share with you all how we kind of do DEI at TruStage, formerly known as CUNA Mutual Group. So the way that we do DEI here at TruStage is kind of split up into something we call our 3 pillars. We're looking at the diversity, inclusion, and belonging piece. So how do we kind of impact the way that our management and workforce shows up in the workplace and such? How does DEI impact a lot of the policies, products, and services that we have here at TruStage? And then ultimately, how does that kind of funnel into the marketplace? How does it impact our consumers? The multicultural business strategy piece there. How does it impact our business operations and the way that we show up with our credit unions, the way that we show up with our clients that we work with in and day out on a daily basis here? What kind of business results come out of the way that we center equity at the heart of everything that we do here across our teams? And then finally, how do those business results impact our community and our industry? How does it impact our corporate social responsibility pillar? How does it impact our partnerships and the way we show up and show out within our communities, within our the neighborhoods in which we live, work, and play in every day? And you see that the cycle goes on and on. It's a never-ending cycle. It's something that we really ground ourselves in here at TruStage, and making sure that we're centering equity at the heart of all that. And we'll talk a little bit more about what equity is, what it could potentially look like, and maybe hopefully connecting it back to our credit unions. But hopefully this slide here paints a good picture for you all as to what the infusion of DEI and the embeddedment of DEI can look like across the company here, not just within the internal workforce, but also within our members and marketplace and our overall communities as well. So I'm going to be touching on a little bit of our workforce impact and DEI and what that kind of looks like as we're continuing to embed DEI across ourselves and our company as TruStage here. We're going to talk a little bit about this, then set some foundational work, and then I'll toss it off to Sela here in a little bit. But wanted to show you all this slide to show how far our DEI efforts have gone here at TruStage and impacted the way that we've looked at our employee experience through HR benefit packages, for example. How has DEI and having an equity and inclusion mindset has impacted our employee value proposition, and how we kind of show up in a lot of the different recruitment styles and talent acquisition that we have with prospective employees. Engagement resource groups, how does that all kind of impact and influence the way that we operate here at TruStage? How does that kind of tie back into journey mapping and employee personas to continue to build an empathy-based mindset so that we're able to use that mindset to influence a lot of the different policies, products, and services that we have at TruStage? So we show you all to paint a picture of the number of different ways that internal DEI efforts can impact the way that we show up for our employees. And I encourage you all to just keep this in mind as we continue to move on through the next couple of slides. How does this tie back to your credit union? What are you all doing right now that's really cool and really an efficient way to kind of embed DEI throughout your organization? And what are some ways that we can maybe see as an opportunity of area for growth as well? All right. So before we get into some of our foundational concepts, I do just want to share a couple of data points with you all. I'm not going to steal all the magic from Sela, because Sela is going to get into a lot of numbers and a lot of really nice data here in a little bit. but did just want to show what some of the benefits of DEI in the workplace are. I think a common question we get from credit unions all the time is how do we measure the impact of DEI across our different strategies that we have at our credit union? And I think it's a best practice that is ever evolving. But we did want to share some secondary research here with you all. First and foremost, showing that diverse teams are 70% more likely to capture a new market. When you've got a lot of different experiences and stories placed in one room together, it really influences and has a lot of really good impact on the way that we are able to do outreach to various markets that we might not have connected very well with before. Diverse teams of ethnic diversity are 33% more likely to outperform financially, and of gender diversity, 21% to more likely to outperform financially as well. Same thing, some of the best conversations that I've had in the workplace have been with very diverse groups and people from lots of different backgrounds and such, to be able to kind of disagree with me, challenge me, and let me know, like, hey, maybe we should consider X, Y, and Z based off of some of the experiences and stories it is that they have to share. And diverse teams we've seen are 6 times more likely to be more innovative in their outreach efforts and strategies as well. I have a couple more data points here. Over time, executive teams with greater gender and ethnic diversity are much more likely to increase financial performance. So just kind of to supplement the data that we just saw on the previous slide here. And you see a couple bar graphs there. The aqua blue color bar graph compared to the navy is able to show what that gap is between teams that are diverse in relation to profitability versus teams that maybe are not so diverse, and you can see the differences in gap there. And then finally, for data on this end here, we did want to show some socioeconomic disparities in the marketplace. And as we think about marketplace, my mind kind of goes to like the member first. But I encourage you all to think about these numbers can easily represent the employees that we work with every day, that we're in the lunchroom with every day, that we're talking to by the water fountain and such. So you see here on the left-hand side of the screen, just the average income by race from 2021. And you see the bar graphs getting smaller and smaller and smaller as we kind of go through the list of racial and ethnic demographic groups there on the left-hand side of the screen there. We go over to the right-hand side, we see home ownership rates by race and ethnicity. And we see that Black and Hispanic folks in particular, their rates are significantly lower than where the United States national average is for home ownership rates. There's a lot of different reasons as to why this is. There's a lot of history, I'm sure, that we could dive into if we had a little bit more time to do so. But did want to show, there's why DEI, it doesn't only impact the employees, but it also impacts the marketplace, which is made up of our employees as well. Keep those statistics in mind, and Stella's going to share, like I said before, some more data here in a little bit. But did want to just set up the space to talk about what do we mean when we shared and talk about diversity and inclusion. Diversity is the wide range of differences that exist amongst people. Some of those may be more visible characteristics. Some, as I mentioned before, when talking about our team photo, some might be less obvious. When you see me in person, I'm 4 feet and 11.5 inches, and I'm brown, and I'm very much a Latina woman identifying individual and presenting. But some less obvious characteristics that you might not know about me is you might not know that I've lived in 7 different states, and a lot of my experiences in those states influence the way that I show up as a person and as a coworker. I'm a very anxious person. I'm constantly overthinking about everything every single day. That's a less obvious characteristic that a lot of people might not see when they're just kind of looking at me as a first impression look in person. Inclusion is a work environment where everyone can participate and is valued regardless of those differences and those various characteristics and identity groups that we bring into the workplace. Over on the right-hand side of the screen, you see a sphere and a lot of different colors and circles there to show us the different dimensions and the complexities that make up who we are as people. A lot of different identity groups within a primary and secondary lens there. Related to religion, things such as working style, language, parental and familial status as well. and then really branching out into some of those external locuses of control too, around organization and cultural values and identities that we might hold as well. And I'll be honest, this circle isn't even encompassing of everything that we can keep in mind and take into conversation too. So take all of this and then other identities that may not be on there as you're continuing to figure out ways into how we learn more about each other's identities in the workplace, and how can we build up a space of bravery and emotional safety where folks feel comfortable sharing some of those identities in the workplace as well. We've covered the diversity and inclusion part of the DEI abbreviation acronym here, but did want to talk about the equality versus equity piece here. So this is the part where I'm going to step back a little bit and open up some space here for folks in the chat. Real quick, what are some just general observations you see about the graphic here on the screen? I'll give folks just a minute or two to put your observations here in the chat, and then we'll go ahead and move along here. We've got a picture here with a couple of different bikes, folks either on the bike or not on the bike. Some of us might have seen this image before, or another variation of it. Seems like there's an age difference. One size does not fit all. There's equality, but not equity. Absolutely. Yeah, we see here that everyone, the bikes seem to be the same size, but it doesn't really accommodate or fit everybody that's trying to use the bike, right? It might be too big, yep, or it might be too small, and it doesn't accommodate for everyone to participate. So let's move on to the next slide and look at the differences here between the two graphics. And I'll open up the chat here again for some space to share what are some general observations you see about the differences in these two graphics here. Give folks just a minute or two here. All right, we've got all bikes are accommodating for the size or the need of the individual. Absolutely, the tools to use for bike riding are better suits the individual, made fits for where they are, equity meets people where they are. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I love the chat, love everything that's coming in here. Adjustments have been made to be more inclusive of our journeys. Absolutely. We see that everyone's able to participate in this bike ride, right? The bike that I would use is not the bike that Sella would use. It's not the bike that Opal might use. It's different for everyone, right? So as we're thinking about the differences between equality and equity, and as we're thinking about this in the context of our credit unions and our employees and members here, I encourage you all, how can equity help advance a lot of our diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies within our organizations? And I want you all to think about too, what happens when we give everyone the same thing? Is it really achieving what it is that we want to do? Or are we doing it because it's the quote unquote things that we've always done? We've always done it this way, like we're just gonna keep it, it works. But I encourage you all to think about who does it work for and why has it worked for that particular group of people there. Specifically within the lens of also HR benefits and such too, and the member side here as well. Thank you all for your chat participation. I think you all hit the nail on the head there. And real quick, I'll round it out here just to continue to paint a picture of what DEI embedment can look like within an organization here. So DEI has the opportunity to be woven into the fabric of our credit unions. And I think a lot of times, and we've seen a lot of different organizations and industries and such where DEI is really centered in the HR department. That's kind of where the go-to is for DEI. But I want to encourage us to think about DEI doesn't need to sit just within HR, right? It has the opportunity to be branched around a variety of different departments across an organization, so that you all collectively as a group can reimagine what that employee experience will look like. Here at TruStage, we've got a collaborative group here that's really leading a lot of equity and inclusion-based efforts here to modernize what the employee experience looks like for us. And we've got folks from our DEI team, from marketing, from customer experience, talent management, product design, so many different groups of people that come together with their lenses of expertise to really influence the way that we are able to keep our employees satisfied and keep our employee retention high here at TruStage. So I encourage you all to think about how DEI is, or maybe it's not right now, represented in more than one area of your credit union, and how can we continue to collaboratively bring people together to reimagine what weaving DEI into the fabric of our credit union looks like. On that note too, some ways to measure organizational impact. This is a question we get from credit unions all the time. How do we measure DEI? What metrics can I bring in at the end of the year to show that DEI, quote unquote, actually works? So we've got a couple of high level things that you see here on your screen. I won't go through all of them, but it really kind of ties back down to employee satisfaction, retention, and recruitment, right? Are you, as a credit union, marketing a lot of your DEI strategy and your engagement resource groups on your website when you have a prospective employee or candidate coming in and seeing if your organization is one that they want and see themselves working in? What does your retention look like? How does satisfaction look like with benefits? Do your employees feel like they have a brave space that they can go to work in and see themselves working in every day? What does your employee support look like when they're going out into the community and having that social impact and that impact of visibility across your communities and your members and neighborhoods as well? So high level, some ways to measure organizational impact. It doesn't have to sit within just HR, like I mentioned before. It's a ripple effect that can be felt across the organization if we can do it in an intentional and thoughtful way. And finally here, before I pass it off to Sela, I did just want to end with a story. We love stories here on our team here at TruStage. So I wanted to share what the results of a equity and inclusive-based mindset looks like when working on some HR benefits here, and how this has impacted a lot of our employees. So at a certain point in time here at TruStage, we had our bereavement policies. And our bereavement policy only applied for what we I think and historically have felt the typical like American dream family was like. So if you have a parent or a sibling that might have unfortunately passed away, the bereavement policy applied to that. If you had a family friend or maybe a second cousin removed, for example, that wasn't in your immediate family, it didn't apply. So there was a point in time where a lot of employees were saying, we've got really large families, right? We've got lots of cousins and we've got grandparents and we've got very large families where this bereavement policy kind of constricts who we can and cannot show up for in those difficult times that come up throughout our lifetime here. So, in talking with some engagement resource groups and folks across the company, our company was able to kind of take in a lot of different diverse and cultural experiences and stories that folks shared with them to really influence the way that we modified our bereavement policy. And we were able to modify it to now be able to include, if anyone that you felt was family or someone you were super close to and you need to take time off to just grieve and take care of yourself throughout that difficult time, please go ahead and do so. But that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't taken the time to actually sit with our employees and actually listen to the stories and experiences and cultural nuances and differences that they were able to share throughout that modernization process there. So just an example of what integrating strategy and long-term results can look like through a DEI lens on the employee side. And now I'll toss it off to Sela to talk to us about what some of our multicultural consumer insights and data looks like on the market side.
Thank you so much, Talia. And before I dive into much of the data, I do want to say that there's a good reason why we start with that DEI before we go into data. It is important to know that before you can do this work for your members, you have to make sure you're doing that work for your credit union. You have to be able to mirror your population that you're in. You have to be able to understand those fundamentals of DEI in order to do a good job of being there for your members, your diverse memberships especially. So we'll be diving through a little bit of data here. I get excited by data, so I will be probably speaking a little bit quicker. Please feel free to let me know to slow down. Please ask a lot of questions, and let's dive into it. So first, starting off, if you see this graphic, it's called a dodecahedron. What this is, it's supposed to represent the entire US population of 332 million plus people. It illustrates the many ways that we're able to look at our consumer. So this is 12-sided for visual purposes. If we really wanted to get into every single way that we could look at people, this would be endless. So just wanted to give you all a quick understanding of what this really looks like. Also wanting to understand that when we're looking at these and we talk about all these different aspects, we want to make sure that we're not narrowing our perspective and we're not feeling like we can't have these conversations if we don't have the correct language. So we're going to talk about that as well. When we're having this conversation, I'm going to be using words like Native American, Indigenous, white, NH, which is non-Hispanic, Hispanic, Latino, Latina, Black, Asian, African American, Asian Pacific Islander, multiracial, all of these different words. And it's okay to sometimes have those questions of, is this the best word to use? Because when you get into it, not any of these populations are a monolith. And so they have different preferences for what they'd like to be identified as within race and ethnicity or other gender identities and things as well. And not wanting that to really get in the way. Another thing that we don't want to minimize or change the way that we're looking at this data is these percentages that you see. So for Native American, we're seeing 1.3%, for multiracial, 2.9% of the population. It's important to remember that this is still 4.3 million people. For multiracial, that's 9.6 million people. We're very intentional that when we look at this data, we want to see the people in it. We don't want to see just the numbers. They're not just a number. They're people. They have their whole identities. They're not just one thing. And that's going to come up a lot in this information, in this data that we're going to talk about. Something else I want to call attention to is that this data that we did, specifically with the What Matters Now data, is the very first time that we're pulling out multiracial Native American. You may have otherwise seen them in another category, but we really wanted to pull that out because we're seeing some major differences, and when they have the same category, they kind of cancel each other out. You're not able to really see these differences in the people. You're not able to see the people for themselves. And so being able to call those out, we'll see in the data later on those big differences that it'll make. But we'll move on to some more US data here. So this is going to be a bar graph that you're going to see from the far left being 1980 to the far right being 2050. So what you see here is white as that gray, orange is black, Latino is blue, Asian Pacific Islander is green, pink is Native American, mixed/other is orange. And this is the whole population and kind of how it's changing. So as you see, the US is becoming more racially diverse. The more that we look at these numbers, the more you're able to see that at some point at 2050, they're projecting that 47% of the population will be white and the rest will be people of color. We're actually seeing that tilt of majority white population will be changing around 2044. So you can see between 2040 and 2050, that number changes from 51% to about 47%. But they've narrowed it down to around 2044 that people of color will be the majority. So something to think about. But while we talk about that being a future item, it's also important to say that over the last 5 years, multicultural consumers accounted for 100% of the US population growth and 61% of credit union growth. Let's really think about that. So when we're talking about growing, we're talking about our future consumers. If we're not catering to the multicultural and the diverse populations that are in our areas, we're not going to be accommodating to the population, to about 50% of the population in the near future. So it's really important to think about that. And as we're moving forward, how are you doing that? And where are you started on your journey? So let's talk about that. So where is your credit union on its multicultural journey? Feel free to add it in chat. We have relaxing, where you've heard the buzz, but doesn't really apply to you. Inquiring, where we're seeing the signs, but we don't know where to start. Preparing, you're recently started, but need a better strategy. Growing, we've been at it for years now and need a few tweaks. And leading, we're leaders in the field and could teach others. Now, I will say, as somebody who is at a TruStage and we are leading in a lot of areas, that doesn't mean that we're leading in all areas, right? So there are definitely places we can say that we are leading and places to say that you are growing or maybe even preparing, maybe even inquiring, and it's okay. That you don't have to all be at the same place. Some teams are further along than others, some demographics are further along than others, and that's okay. Anything, feel free to throw that in chat, what you're excited to learn about or excited to continue having these conversations in these spaces. And as we think about that, make sure that you're thinking about that, because we're going to have action steps all throughout. So when you're saying that you may be preparing, think about the action steps and how you could start to really implement those or growing. Are those places that you can see those tweaks? as we start to dive into the new research. So I will dive a little bit into methodology, and I know that this might be a little bit overwhelming for some people. For the What Matters Now 2022 methodology, we did both a quantitative and a qualitative part. So the quantitative was a survey with about 9,610 participants. This was an online survey available in both English and Spanish. And for the qualitative, it was about 35 participants. So this was online journaling. These are photos and videos talking about financial practices, their attitudes, their hopes, their dreams, their habits. And both of these, they had to be responsible for or share in making household decisions. And so with that, we were able to include, like I said before, for race, ethnicity, Native American, and multiracial as their own groups, not in an other category. But also we have generational from baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z. Now, Gen Z is 18 to 24-year-olds who, like I said, have responsible for or share in making household financial decisions. If they do not fit those criteria, they were not involved. So with that, we were still able to get a very high number, as you can see here, about 2,000 Gen Z individuals to participate in this survey. So we're super excited about this and want to talk a little bit more about why we focus on multicultural and multi-generational with this data. So with multicultural consumers being the growing force, and Gen Z and millennials are continuing to change life stages right now, we need to understand all parts of their identities to serve them with the intentionality and the authenticity to be their best financial institution, to be able to serve them in the best way, to help them reach their goals and their hopes and their dreams, and to work through those trust and satisfactions issues that they're having. So with that, that is kind of why we chose to dive into multi-generational and multicultural. Of course, there are a ton of other things that we will continue to do research into, and we always are doing research into, but this is going to be the main focus for What Matters Now. So first, we're going to start looking at worries. So this is called the Worry Web, and it's going to be a lot of data up on the screen here, so we're going to walk through it kind of step by step. So this is looking at race and ethnicity. So across this circle you see here is going to be different types of worries. So keeping up with the rising cost of living, paying monthly bills, having money to put food on the table, having money to take care of a parent or loved one, having money to take care of children, things like that. And so you see at the very center is going to be 0%, so they have 0% worry about that, all the way up to 60% at that outer rim. We're going to bring these in one by one. So we're going to start with the white population. So you get to see their polygon and where their spikes are. We see a spike there for keeping up with the rising cost of living being one of their more higher worries. Then we'll bring in the Black population. So you see where maybe there are some that are similar, like what life will be like in the next few years, but there are some that are much higher, like saving enough for my children's college education. Next, we'll bring on Hispanic. So having enough money to retire on. Really being a huge spike for them there, but also seeing some that are really close to the Black population, like paying the rent and mortgage. Then we'll bring on Asian population. We do see that go a little bit closer to that white population there with some worries, but we do see some higher spikes as well, like the rising cost of healthcare and insurance. We'll bring in the Native American population, starting to see some more spikes. And lastly, the multiracial community here. So when we look at this, I'm going to highlight all the dots for each different worry in the color of the community that saw the most worry in that space. So for all of these, we actually saw multiracial have the most worry in every single one of these categories. We see some differences. We see some worries are closer than others. Some worries are a lot lower than others. We see paying off student loans does see a dip here in comparison to keeping up with the rising cost of living. Important things to think about when we're talking about worries, specifically financial worries of our members. Now, we're going to look at this by generation now, and so I am going to ask for some participation here. And Talia, if you could help me with reading out the chat. We're going to go through these by generation. So who out of these generations do you think have the highest worry? So who's going to be that outside circle with all the highlighted points? Any guesses here? So we go baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z.
We've got a vote for millennials. We've got a vote for boomers. Another vote for baby boomers.
I know y'all are trying to think of everything from the race ethnicity slide and how you can best make your educated guess here. We'll give you a couple more minutes before I start to reveal the answers. Anything additional in chat?
Got one more for baby boomers, Stella.
Sounds good. So list starts to go through, and we'll actually start with Gen Z. So here you're going to see the Gen Z polygon. Really, not too much information to go up here. We're starting right off the beginning. But then we see millennials, which goes even just a little bit higher. And then we see Generation X, which we see some high points and once again some lower points, a little bit closer to Gen Z in some areas. And then we see baby boomers. So when we look at this chart and we're going off of some of you may be surprised based off of your guesses here, we have to think about the life stage aspect. And so that's one of the biggest things that we got here from, although something like having enough money to retire on may be high for baby boomers, people that are currently planning and aren't at that point are maybe seeing a lot more of that worry there. But we do see Gen Z, who's not quite at that life stage yet of truly planning that far ahead, of having their family to take care of and thinking about that, taking care of maybe their parents as well. They have their worry that's a little bit lower, but not quite as low as baby boomers there. So when we're looking at this, let's think about life stage. But when we say who is actually the highest, it's actually pretty close to a 50-50 split, with millennials having the most worries, 6 out of the total, and Gen X having the second most, with 5 out of the total being their highest and being the highest in these areas. So really think about those life stages and how important it is when you're thinking about these are the generations that are starting to have families that are also taking care of not only their children, but their parents as well. They're starting to really think about retirement and what does that look like and how long do they have before they retire. And so that's the life stages that they're at. And so it makes sense that worry is where it's at. So for this action step, do the work to understand and empathize with your members. Then take this human perspective and approach to marketing and education efforts around the products and services that can help alleviate a little bit of those financial worries. When we see this much worry, how can we help how do we be there to be a helping hand and help them along their journey on this? So we'll continue moving forward with more data points here. So what we see here is about 60% of people want their children to achieve more financially than them. Fantastic data point, but it actually gets higher for other populations. So for Native American, it's 66. For Hispanic, it's 65. And for Black, it's 63. So what are the products and services that people are using to achieve this dream? And what things can we do to help? So carve out an engagement strategy, focus on generational wealth building and wealth transfer to drive growth and emotional connection. When we talk about family, we talk about legacy, these are things that really resonate with these communities because we're talking about their children. We're talking about realistically what they want and what they see their future and their goals are. So being able to make that connection and really talk about their familial connection is really going to help build trust and satisfaction and also just help them continue to build wealth for their families. Next, we're going to talk about Native Americans here. So before I dive too much into the data that you're seeing on the screen, I want to talk about why we focus on Native American. So one of the ways that Indigenous communities get discriminated against the most is by not being represented, not being seen, made to feel invisible. And so they're often missing in a lot of really important information and data and research. And so we wanted to make sure that their voices could be seen and heard. Now, with that, we also want to acknowledge the fact that this is our first time really diving deeper into Native American data. And so we wanted to make sure that we were incorporating as much as we could from communities that are already doing the work. So ReState is the longest standing Native CDFI intermediary, offering financial products and developing services exclusively to the Native CDFI and Native communities. So it's important that when we look at this, we understand that these are Native communities and communities creating things for their communities. And so when you do that, when you have people creating products and strategies for their own communities, they know what the needs are, they know what they're thinking, and their cultural values are going to be. And so they're able to connect at a deeper level. Now, another reason why it was so important that we pulled out the Native American and multiracial and not have an other category is, as you see here with the data point, credit unions are my primary financial institution for banking. Native Americans agreed at the highest at 21%. Multiracial is actually quite low on this at 14%. And so had we combined them into another category, we would have known that Native American was agreeing to this at such a high rate. So the action step here is really being able to connect with organizations that build to support these communities by these communities, really being able to create that connection for them. So next, we're going to go into some types of products and accounts that consumers currently have. So Hispanics are more likely to have debit cards. Asian consumers are more likely to have checking, credit cards, and investments. Black consumers are more likely to leverage loans, life insurance, and payment protection. And Native American consumers generally have fewer financial products. So consider these cultural needs and perceptions in addition to the traditional life stage moments when deploying cross-sell campaigns to maintain relevancy with these multicultural consumers. If we know that they tend to lean toward these products, how do we help them see the benefit of other products? How do we help them see that they can do this and more? How do we better connect and market our products that they already are taking advantage of to help them, once again, see themselves in these products and not feel a lack of trust or not feel different from what the target market may be? We'll continue on with loans here and really talking about lending over the next 5 years. So there's a lot of data on that chart, and I know it may be a little bit small on your screen, so we're going to just look at patterns. So multicultural Gen Z and millennial consumers will have a big interest in lending over the next 5 years. So you see a loan type on the far left, then everything that is highlighted is a percentage that is higher than the overall percentage of wanting that type of loan in the next 5 years. So you see Gen Z and millennial, that entire area is all highlighted. They are much more likely than the overall to want these products. Gen X has one with auto new, but other than that, they are either about the same or lower than the overall. It's, you see for the Black community, it is all the way down. Everything is highlighted. Multiracial, everything is for auto new. For Hispanic, it's about half of the loans. Asian Pacific Islander and Native American, Native Alaskan is about a third of the loans here. So really being able to hone in on these and connect, review and update your lending products to ensure that they fit your membership and the community that you serve. Making sure that these lending products are visible to all consumers and inclusive with authentic marketing. That's going to be so important. They need to feel seen in the products that they want. They need to feel like you're hearing them and you're hearing their needs and their goals. So we'll keep moving forward. So when we talk about loans, it's not just about, once again, that kind of hard number data. Do they want it? Do they not? But it's also about how does that make you feel? So getting a loan makes me feel idealistic in being able to help others. When we ask that question, we see that that resonated a lot with our Black and multiracial consumers. Multiracial at 34% and Black at 28%, saying that they agree or strongly agree with this statement. So understand the significance of obtaining certain products and services that may have for people in positions in the products in a way that resonates with your members. So when you're talking about loans, are you talking about loans in a very jargon heavy kind of way, or are you talking about loans in a way that can help them help others, can talk about their goals, talk about what they are trying to get out of this, and have that emotional perspective, be able to look at them like humans and understand the impact that this can have on their life. When you do that, once again, you're creating a safe space for them. You're able to have a conversation that resonates with how they think about these loans. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about the idea of hustle. So the question here was, salary isn't enough. You have to hustle to make money. We see that this was higher agreed when it comes to the Black, Hispanic, Native American, and multiracial communities. So definitely understanding that you need, also millennials also being higher here. So you need more than one job to fulfill their goals. So when we think about this, this is not just, salary isn't enough to meet ends. It's also, salary isn't enough for me to live and fulfill the goals that I see for myself in the future. It's not just that need, it's about wanting to meet goals for yourself. And so with the idea of hustle, it's important to understand that they're probably working multiple jobs. That may be gig economy, that could be multiple jobs, working long hours. The list could go on and as to how that looks for different people. So reimagine products and services so they are flexible enough to accommodate people who are paid at different times, from different places, and in very many different ways. Do you have that flexibility for your members? And that can have a huge impact on whether or not they want to stay with you, whether or not they feel satisfied, or they trust the location if they're having struggles and they don't know where to put the money that they're getting from these jobs if you don't support like a gig economy type of job. If they're getting paid through PayPal and they have their own business, is that something that you support at a credit union? and how can you start to implement those? That way you are able to meet them where they are. So with that, we do want to talk a little bit about small business owners, but before I get into the data, I want to introduce Kay here on the screen. So Kay is a absolutely fantastic, she's 33, female, millennial. She is a white, Black, African-American, American Indian, Native. She's a stay-at-home mom. She's a teacher, a chef, a gardener, an entrepreneur, and the list goes on. And I want her to talk a little bit more about her experience when she started her business, why, how the pandemic had an impact on all of this, as somebody who is a lot of those aspects that we just talked about on the last screen. So I'll let Kay speak for herself.
Where am I in my life right now? Well, I started a juice business because my dad had a colon cancer scare, so I was just kind of motivated to do that. I've wanted to do it for a long time, but just being stuck in my way and whatever. I started a juice business and it's going okay, but there's definitely been a pause on the type of progress that I wanted to make because of the pandemic. So the pandemic has definitely not shifted. Well, it has shifted my perspective, really brought back what I wanted to do. My husband and I, we've always wanted to have land, always wanted to grow our own food, store rainwater, store drinking water, be up on the gas and everything like that. So this pandemic has really reminded us of what we set out to do before it started. And it's renewed, just our desire to live off grid in a more sustainable way, because at the drop of a dime, there's nothing in the store, there's no toilet paper, there's no gas, and I don't like depending on anybody, the government or anything, for basic needs like that. So yeah, we've definitely shifted to thinking, how can we sustain our life and make things easier and better and teach our children, how to live less consumerist lifestyles.
So this is one of those ways where you're able to really talk to your member and understand kind of what they're thinking about, what are their goals, how are they maneuvering through not only the credit union space or their financial space, but also through their life. And that's going to have a huge impact on what they're doing and how you can help them. So when you see small business owners, they tend to be multiracial, Black, or millennial. And so how do you examine your small business products and services to have that relevance to the multiracial Black and millennial founders and entrepreneurs that are here? Look at Kay, she's in her garage and she's getting it done. She's a mom, she's an entrepreneur, she's doing all of these things while trying to reach these goals that she has for herself and her family. So being able that you can really connect and work with her on these experiences. We are going to talk a little bit about financial and kind of that digital aspect here. So I'm the type who checks my financial accounts daily. You see that is a lot higher for the Black, Hispanic, Native American, multiracial, millennial, and Gen X. And so when we're looking at that, you may have had some kind of thoughts about, oh, Gen X and not Gen Z. That tends to be a question that we get quite often here. But what we actually notice is that while they are checking their accounts daily, Gen Z is actually dissatisfied with mobile apps, which is usually when you see them checking their accounts daily, it's either through a laptop or a desktop, like an Asian Pacific Islander may be using that, but mobile for a lot of these other race and ethnic groups. So Gen Z is dissatisfied with mobile apps, and we wanted to dive a little bit deeper there. So we see that they are the lowest when it says that the information is easy to understand, that it includes all of the information that they need, easy to navigate, and the app loads quickly. They have the lowest satisfaction scores across the board for all of those areas. So the action step here is that we know that these groups do want to use the mobile app. They want to be able to check their account easily and actively. So how can we ensure a simple and intuitive user experience on the mobile app so they can do that in a way that better fits them? Next, we're going to talk a little bit about that. So before, once again, that digital aspect, right? So before working with a financial institution, I check their online presence. So we see that this is very high for the Black, multiracial, and millennial groups. And so when we talk about online presence, we have to understand what that means. So that's more than just your mobile app and your website. That's going to be social media. It's going to be news articles that you're coming up in. It's going to be all of these different things. And they are checking that before they start working with you. So action step here is to consider how your credit union is showing up online. Is your website welcoming and informative? Are you thinking about social media? Do you have a social media presence? Is your press visible? Do you have your employees out there? Do your employees represent the community that you're in? Are you showcasing the differentiators well online? So I haven't asked for you. You can feel free to do this now or do this later. But go to your credit union's website. Go to the social media. Do you see yourself represented? Do you see multicultural millennials represented? Do you see me and Talia represented? Go to social media pages and do the same thing. Go and search your credit union. Are you seeing your community on those pages? What they look like, what they sound like, what their feelings and their goals are is that being represented there? And so I've been talking a lot about trust and satisfaction, so I do want to talk about that as well. So multiracial and Gen Z consumers tend to have lower trust and satisfaction with their primary financial institution compared to others. We also see Asian Pacific Islander does seem to have lower satisfaction as well. Just wanted to be able to call that out as it's only a 1 percentage point difference. So being able to watch that and see kind of why are we getting these? Gen Z has a huge drop off in comparison to millennial, Gen X, and baby boomers. So to dive even deeper, we wanted to look at the DEI aspect of that. So there is lower satisfaction around DEI for BIPOC, Gen Z, and millennials. So the highlight here on this page is actually going to be the lower percentages. They are lower than the overall and lower than the white population as well. And so we have some of the lowest ones are have staff representing your culture, promote products and services that are relevant to your culture, reflect your culture in marketing messages. And lower that is for Gen Z and millennials is to speak a language that you prefer. So really wanting to call that out when we're looking at this, it's the Black, Hispanic, Asian Pacific Islander, and multiracial all have those as much lower for their satisfaction. So how do you elevate your DEI plans to be strategic and to strategic imperatives to ensure promises are lived out authentically across the credit union? Being able to really channel and experience touch points. How do you understand the journey that your consumers are going through and being able to really represent them and meet these needs internally? Once again, we talked about that. If you're doing the internal work, it's going to be able to come through to your members a lot easier. So that was a lot of data that we pulled and threw at you right there. This is a QR code that can actually have you download the What Matters Now report. The report also has action steps all throughout the presentation, so please feel free to download that. I'll leave this up for a second. And then I will open it up for some questions. And Talia, do you want to talk a little bit about the services before we do that?
Yes, we can end with this and then open it up for Q&A like Stella mentioned. So just real quick, if there's any part of the presentation, our chat here this afternoon that you really enjoyed, that you want to learn more about, or if you just want to connect with us and talk about DEI and multicultural consumer insights and such, feel free to scan the QR codes there on the bottom of the screen. We've got a QR code that'll take you to our DEI services page, and another one that will connect you to one of our advisors or a member of our team. So on the left-hand side in the yellow box, we've got a list of different services that we offer that touch on the marketplace side, like Stella just talked about, and also talk about and touch on the first half of the presentation with the employee and internal work-base there. So just wanted to open up the invitation there. We'll open up the space now for questions. And Stella, we did get a question for you earlier on in your portion of today's conversation on how much does the number of people in each age group for generations affect percentages? So this question came up during the generational worry web earlier today.
Yes, so when we do our research, we make sure to oversample so that way all generations, all race and ethnicity are able to have substantial data. But what we also do is that we weight it. So that way we are not going to, if somebody has more than another, or if it doesn't represent kind of across the board if something's off, we weight all of our data. So we're making sure that this is not going to be adjusted based off of how many, but rather just by percentage.
We've got another question in the chat here. Will this slide deck go out to folks who registered? I see a head nod from SB. Yes, it will.
Yes, we will have the PDF go out, so you can also have the QR codes on that as well. Another question? Are you saying that we did that great of a job? And we're ending on time? This is going great.
Not a question, but a comment from Kimberly Plants. Great insight. Thanks to Maricela and Talia. Thanks for joining me, Kimberly and Yolanda. Thanks so much for joining us, y'all. Feel free to continue to drop questions in the chat there. I know we're coming up on time here, but yeah, this was fun. It was a good way to kick the weekend off here. So thanks so much for having us.
Awesome. Such great information. And you two are just phenomenal. So
Thank you.
there's that. That's probably why there's not a lot of questions, because you're just phenomenal. Let's see. Yes. Wonderful insights. Thank you. Great points. So we will make it available to everybody once we have the recording all ready and done up. We'll send it to everybody that attended and registered, because we did have quite a few that registered that, life happens. You're maybe not able to join. So the recording will be available along with the PDF. If you scan that QR code, the TruStage team is just amazing. So reach out with any questions or any guidance that you might need. They are the bomb. And with that, I guess we're going to give you 4 minutes back of your day today. So everybody have a wonderful and safe weekend. And thank you so much for taking your time to join us.